or excuse me, Bill 55, I think we're doing now. Correct?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to speak to the second reading of a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Residential Tenancies Act. Mr. Speaker, our government has held many discussions and consultations with stakeholders and colleagues to better understand the housing challenges our province faces, the creative solutions needed, and the opportunities for short and long-term improvements in areas that need it most. We have named a minister responsible for housing with a mandate to bring all provincial housing initiatives under a unified lens to find impactful ways to improve housing. We are renewing the New Brunswick Housing Corporation as a Crown Corporation responsible for developing and implementing a housing strategy. This strategy will be evaluated and adjusted annually to ensure it remains effective. And we have implemented several amendments to the Residential Tenancies Act to help address tenant concerns and keep them in their homes. This includes limiting rent increases to once every year, prohibiting rent increases within the first year of tenancy, increasing the notice period for a rent increase to 6 months from 3 to give tenants more time to adapt, giving tenants 30 days to apply to have a rent increase reviewed instead of 15 days, and further extending the application period from 30 to 60 days, giving authority to the Residential Tenancies Tribunal to review all rent increases to ensure new rent amounts are within market value, and allowing rent increases that are significant and within market value to be phased in for up to 3 years. Despite these changes, Mr. Speaker, the strong growth in New Brunswick's population and its effect on the housing market has created ongoing impacts on tenants and landlords. Through our ongoing evaluation of the rental market and the effectiveness of these measures, we have identified necessary amendments to streamline and strengthen regulations within the Residential Tenancies Act. They include amending the definition of premises so that it is clear that accommodations provided by an educational institution are not covered by the Act, revising the way rent increases are applied to fixed-term tenancies so that all tenancies abide by the same rules as previously listed. That will be retroactive to January 1st, 2023, including current and new rent amounts on the notice of rent increase form as opposed to listing just the rent increase amount, requiring the landlord to apply to the Residential Tenancies Officer to dispose of a tenant's belongings after the tenant has terminated, depending on the nature of the belongings and the value. And specifically, abandoned belongings valued at less than $500 may be disposed of after being stored for a minimum of 10 days following the termination of a tenancy. This must be authorized by the Residential Tenancies Officer. If the value is estimated to be $500 or above, the current regulations in the Act apply, making it an offense for a landlord to fail to apply to a Residential Tenancies Officer to dispose of abandoned belongings when required, repealing the requirement that sheriffs be involved in removing personal property from a premise, requiring a landlord to apply to a Residential Tenancies Officer to terminate a tenancy for renovations. Terminating a tenancy for renovations will mean that the landlord has all necessary permits and approvals, intends in good faith to renovate the unit, requires the unit to be vacant for a prolonged period of time, and is only able to complete the renovations or repairs if the tenancy is terminated. When a tenancy is terminated due to a relative moving into the unit or the unit is being used for a purpose other than residential, requiring the occupancy or change in use to be a minimum of 3 months, and that failure to comply with this provision shall be a Category E offense under the Provincial Offences Procedure Act. Changing the long-term lease provisions so that the process for implementing a rent increase is consistent across all tenancies, adding various offense provisions to ensure compliance with the Act, and making any other amendment as may be required. Mr. Speaker, our proposed amendments will streamline processes for tenants and landlords, providing certainty in our rental market and create confidence in the Residential Tenancy Tribunal's authority to protect tenants. These measures will bring more balance and fairness to the rental market with clearly defined rules, regulations, and consequences for non-compliance. We will continue to monitor the effectiveness of our measures and introduce more if required. Mr. Speaker, for our government to make informed decisions on renting, we need to hear from tenants who have questions or concerns. Over the past 2 years, we have made a significant effort to inform tenants of their rights and where to go for help. There has been an increase in requests for assistance, and I encourage anyone with concerns or questions about their tenancies to reach out to us for help. There's no cost to apply to have a notice reviewed, and anyone can apply on the tenant's behalf. Tenants who aren't sure what their rights are or how to apply for help can call one of our housing navigators. Navigators provide one-on-one support for any housing needs residents may have. Mr. Speaker, our government is working hard to find the right solutions for our province, and I thank all those who have to share their experiences with us. One of our priorities is building vibrant and sustainable communities through New Brunswick, and we are listening. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.